If you're enjoying this video, smash that like button, subscribe and hit the bell, share it with your friends, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Every like and subscribe helps the channel grow. My name is Michael Winters, and I've seen things that no one would believe. After 28 years as a ranger in the White Mountain National Forest, I thought I knew every tree, every trail, and every creature that called these mountains home. But what happened in October 1977 changed everything I thought I knew about these woods. I live alone in my ranger cabin, well, not exactly alone. Thunder, my German Shepherd, has been my only family for the past 7 years. He's more than just a dog, he's my partner, my friend, and sometimes I think he understands me better than any human ever could. Every morning we patrol the trails together, checking on campers and making sure everyone's safe. At least, that's what we used to do before everything went wrong. It all started 3 weeks ago when the first hiker went missing. Just vanished, like they'd been plucked right off the trail. Their camping gear was still there, food half-eaten, like they'd just gotten up to take a quick walk and never came back. That was strange enough, but then 2 more disappeared the same way. The local police thought maybe they'd gotten lost or a bear had gotten them, but I've dealt with bear attacks before, and this was different. Very different. The weather's been weird too. It's October, sure, and we get early snow up here in New Hampshire, but not like this. The peaks are already dusted white, and there's this strange cold that creeps in suddenly, even on sunny days. Thunder feels it too. He's started acting strange, growling at shadows, refusing to follow certain trails. In all our years together, I've never seen him like this. This morning, while I was having my coffee and looking out over the mountains, old Joseph from the local tribe came to visit. He's never done that before. The look in his eyes when he told me about the hungry one sent chills down my spine. He said the elders have been having dreams, bad ones, and that something ancient has woken up in these mountains. I'm not usually one for ghost stories or legends. Vietnam taught me that real monsters are human. But after what I've seen these past few days, well, let's just say I'm starting to wonder if those old tribal warnings might be more than just stories. Tomorrow, Thunder and I are heading up to check out some strange tracks we found near Eagle Ridge. The weather report says it'll be clear, but my gut tells me something's coming. Something big. I've got my father's old silver compass in my pocket. Never failed me yet, and enough supplies for a few days. But somehow, I don't think any amount of preparation is going to be enough for what's waiting up there in those mountains. I should probably start at the beginning, tell you exactly how everything unfolded. Maybe then you'll understand why I wake up some nights, covered in cold sweat, still hearing those whispers in the wind. It was a Tuesday morning when I first saw something that made my blood run cold. Thunder and I were checking out reports of strange noises near Miller's Creek, you know, the usual stuff we rangers deal with. The air was crisp, and my breath came out in little white puffs. Something felt off though. The forest was too quiet. No birds singing, no squirrels running around. Just silence. Thunder stopped suddenly, his ears perked up. I've learned to trust his instincts, they're usually better than mine. That's when we found it. A deer carcass, half-eaten. Now I've seen plenty of animal kills before, but this was different. The deer was frozen solid, even though it wasn't nearly cold enough for that. And the tracks around it, they weren't from any animal I knew. They looked almost human, but huge, maybe twice the size of my boot. I took some photos and measurements, trying to stay calm and professional about it. And the second sepernaut betreppers my wet. But Thunder wouldn't go near the carcass. He just stood there, hackles raised, making this low growling sound I'd never heard before. It reminded me of times in Vietnam when we'd sense an ambush coming, that same heavy feeling in the air. Back at the ranger station, I called John, the local wildlife expert. He's been here longer than me, seen everything these mountains could throw at us. But when I showed him the photos, he just shook his head. "Mike," he said, "I've never seen anything like this." That night it snowed. Not much, just enough to cover the ground. But it was strange, the weather forecast had predicted clear skies. I sat in my cabin, going through old reports, looking for anything similar. Thunder wouldn't settle down, kept pacing by the windows, whining softly. Around midnight, I heard it nod, a sound that still haunts me. It was like someone calling for help, but wrong somehow. The voice seemed to drift on the wind, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Help, please somebody." Thunder started barking, more aggressive than I'd ever heard him. I grabbed my flashlight and rifle, standard procedure when checking distress calls, but something made me hesitate at the door. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was Thunder's reaction, or maybe it was remembering old Joseph's warnings. Whatever it was, I'm glad I stayed inside. Because what I saw through my window, the moonlight was bright on the fresh snow, and something moved out there. Something tall. Much too tall to be human. It passed through the trees like a shadow, leaving behind footprints that steamed in the cold air, and the voice, that crying voice for help, it was coming from that thing. I spent the rest of the night wide awake, my rifle ready. Thunder pressed against my leg. By morning, the footprints were gone, filled in by fresh snow. If it wasn't for the photos of the deer carcass on my phone, I might have convinced myself it was all a dream. But I knew better. Something was out there, something that shouldn't exist, and it was hunting in my mountains. The next morning, I knew I had to do something. 3 hikers were still missing, and whatever was out there wasn't going to stop. I called in some backup, 2 other rangers, Pete and Sarah, who I'd worked with before. They arrived around noon, and I could tell they didn't really believe my story about the frozen deer and the strange tracks. Can't blame them. I wouldn't have believed it either, a week ago. We split up to cover more ground, keeping in radio contact. Thunder and I took the north trail, heading toward where I'd seen those tracks the night before. The weather was getting worse, dark clouds rolling in even though no storm was forecast. The temperature kept dropping, and I could feel that same heavy silence settling over the forest. "Mike, you need to see this." Sarah's voice crackled over the radio. She was about a mile east of us. When we reached her location, she was standing over a backpack, torn and frozen solid, just like the deer. It belonged to one of the missing hikers. The strange thing was, there was frost all around it, spreading out like a spider web on the ground. It was 45 degrees out, but that frost wasn't melting. Then Thunder started acting weird again. His tail went between his legs, and he pressed against my leg, whimpering. That's when we heard it, branches cracking in the distance, but not like when a deer or bear moves through the woods. These sounds were coming from way up high, like something tall was pushing through the treetops. "Everyone, back to the ranger station. Now," I said into the radio. Something in my voice must have convinced them because nobody argued. We were about halfway back when the snow started. Not normal snow, this was like a wall of white appearing out of nowhere, surrounding just our small area. The temperature dropped so fast my fingers went numb. Through the swirling snow, I could barely see Pete and Sarah a few feet ahead of me. That's when we heard the voices, all 3 missing hikers calling for help from different directions. Sarah started to turn toward one of the voices, but I grabbed her arm. "Those aren't real," I said, remembering the voice from last night. "Whatever's out there, it's trying to separate us." Thunder barked a warning, and through the snow, I saw it. A shadow, impossibly tall, moving between the trees. Its head looked wrong, like it had antlers, but twisted and huge. The air around it seemed to freeze, creating crystals that hung in the air. "Run!" I shouted, and we did. We ran faster than I'd ever run before, Thunder leading the way. Behind us, something crashed through the trees, and the voices got louder, angry now, not sounding human anymore. We made it back to the ranger station, slamming the door behind us. The snow stopped as suddenly as it had started, and when we looked out the window, the forest was normal again. But we all saw it. We all knew something was hunting in these mountains. That night, huddled in the station with guns ready, we made a plan. We couldn't just wait for it to pick us off one by one. We had to find those missing hikers, if they were still alive, and end this thing, whatever it was. I just didn't know then how much it would cost us. The next morning, old Joseph showed up again at the ranger station. His face was grim as he looked at the photos we'd taken. "What you're dealing with," he said quietly, "is what my people call the wendigo. It's an ancient evil that awakens when winter comes early. It hunts by mimicking voices, making you see things that aren't there." He pulled out something wrapped in old leather, an obsidian blade, black as night. "This has been in my family for generations," he said. "Regular weapons won't work against it. You'll need this." I didn't want to believe in monsters and magic knives, but after what we'd seen, I took the blade. Pete and Sarah looked scared but determined. We gathered our gear, warm clothes, emergency supplies, flares and radios. Thunder stayed close to me, his eyes never leaving the forest outside. Around noon we headed out. The plan was to check the cave system near Eagle Ridge. It was the only place we hadn't searched yet. The weather was strange again. The patches of ice appearing on the ground even though it was sunny. Thunder led the way, but I could tell he was nervous. We were about halfway to the caves when Sarah spotted something. But pieces of torn clothing frozen to a tree. They belonged to one of the missing hikers. The ice around it was black, like ink frozen in water. That's when Thunder started growling. The temperature dropped suddenly. Our breath came out in thick clouds. Through the trees ahead something moved, something tall and thin, with skin like old ice. I raised my rifle out of habit but remembered old Joseph's warning about regular weapons being useless. "Stay together," I whispered. But the snow started again, swirling around us like a white wall. I could barely see Pete and Sarah anymore. Thunder's barking became frantic. Then we heard the screams, real ones this time. Not the mimicked calls from before. Pete's voice cut through the snow. "It's got Sarah." I ran toward his voice, Thunder right beside me. Through the swirling white I caught glimpses of something dragging Sarah away. Her hand reaching out, her face frozen in terror. Pete fired his rifle, the shots echoing through the trees. The creature turned. I saw its face for just a second and I'll never forget it. Hollow eyes, mouth full of icicle teeth, antlers that seemed to scrape the sky. Thunder launched himself at the thing, trying to save Sarah. My brave dog, my best friend. I saw him disappear into the swirling snow, heard his fierce barking turn into a yelp, then silence. "Thunder!" I screamed. The snow cleared just enough for me to see Sarah lying in the snow, not moving. Pete was gone, and Thunder, there was just his collar frozen solid on the ground. I grabbed Sarah. She was alive but barely breathing, her skin cold as ice. I had to get her back to safety. But as I lifted her, I knew this wasn't over. That thing had taken my dog, my friend, and now it was personal. I got Sarah back to the ranger station and called for emergency help. While waiting for the helicopter, I prepared myself for what I knew I had to do. I couldn't let that thing take anyone else. The image of Thunder's empty collar kept flashing in my mind, making my hands shake with anger and grief. Old Joseph was waiting at the station. "You saw it," he said. "It wasn't a question. The wendigo is strongest during the dark hours. But tomorrow is special. There will be a solar eclipse. That's when it's most vulnerable." I spent that night studying the old maps Joseph brought, marking the locations of all the attacks. They formed a pattern, all circling around one spot, an ancient tribal burial ground deep in the mountains. "That's its lair," Joseph said. "That's where you'll find your missing people if they're still alive." Early next morning, I set out alone. I had the obsidian blade strapped to my belt, my father's compass in my pocket, and a small pack with essential supplies. The forest felt different now, colder, darker, like it was holding its breath. As I got closer to the burial ground, the air got colder. Ice crystals formed on my beard, and my breath came out in thick clouds. I started finding signs, torn pieces of clothing, frozen blood, and strange claw marks on trees. Then I saw Pete's backpack, covered in frost. The eclipse was starting, the sky slowly getting darker. That's when I heard it, Thunder's bark. It sounded just like him, calling me from somewhere ahead. My heart jumped before I remembered. This thing could copy voices. It was trying to trick me, using my dog's voice just like it had used the hikers. I know what you are, I shouted into the darkening forest. Come face me. The ground shook, trees cracked, and there it was, 15 feet tall, skin like gray ice, antlers scraping against branches. Its eyes, they were like looking into frozen pools of darkness. In one long clawed hand it held Pete's jacket. We stared at each other in the strange eclipse light. All my years of ranger training, all my time in Vietnam, nothing had prepared me for this. But I thought of Thunder, of the missing hikers, of Sarah's frozen face, and I knew I couldn't back down. The wendigo moved first, faster than anything that big should move. The fight was about to begin, and I gripped the obsidian blade tightly. This was it. Either I would end this thing, or it would add me to its list of victims. The fight was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. The wendigo swung its massive claws at me, and I barely rolled away in time. The ground where I'd been standing turned to solid ice. My military training kicked in: stay mobile, look for weaknesses, wait for the right moment. But this thing was smart. It kept creating walls of ice, trying to trap me. The eclipse made everything darker, and the creature seemed to melt into the shadows. Then I heard Thunder's bark again, this time from behind me. I almost turned but caught myself. You can't trick me anymore, I growled. That's when it charged. I dove under a fallen tree and its claws got stuck in the trunk. For just a second I saw my chance. I slashed at its leg with the obsidian blade. The creature screamed. Meat, a sound like breaking ice and winter wind. Black blood, cold as liquid nitrogen, sprayed from the wound. But I'd gotten too close. One of its claws caught my shoulder, ripping through my jacket and flesh. The cold was worse than the pain. I could feel my arms starting to freeze. If I didn't end this soon, I'd be too numb to fight. That's when I saw them. Shapes in the ice near the burial ground. The missing hikers, Pete, all frozen but still alive. Their eyes moved, watching the fight. The wendigo had been keeping them, saving them for later. The thought made me sick with anger. I remembered what old Joseph said about the eclipse being its weak point. The sky was getting darker by the minute. I had to time this perfectly. I backed toward the burial ground, pretending to stumble. The creature followed, just like I hoped. Then I saw something that almost broke my concentration. Thunder's ghost, clear as day, standing at the edge of the burial ground. The wendigo saw it too and hesitated. That was all I needed. As the eclipse reached its peak, I lunged forward with every bit of strength I had left. The obsidian blade struck true, right where its heart should be. The creature's scream shook the mountains. Its body began to crack like breaking ice. But it wasn't done. With its last strength, it drove an ice spike through my shoulder, pinning me to the ground. We were locked together as its body started to break apart. The cold was unbearable. Everything was going dark. I woke up 3 days later in the hospital. My right shoulder was badly damaged, and I'd lost 2 fingers to frostbite. But I was alive. The rescue team found me at the burial ground. Along with all the missing people, alive but suffering from severe hypothermia. Pete made it too, though he doesn't talk much about what happened anymore. The official report says it was a freak storm that caused everything. They blamed the disappearances on bad weather and confusion. Nobody wanted to believe what really happened. The cave where we found the hikers mysteriously collapsed a week later, burying any evidence that was left. But the local tribe knows the truth. They held a ceremony for me, and especially for Thunder. Old Joseph said my dog's spirit helped defeat the wendigo by leading it to the sacred ground where it was weakest. I'm not sure about all that, but sometimes on cold nights I still hear a familiar bark outside my window. I kept working as a ranger, but things were different after that. Every October, when the first snow starts to fall, I check the burial ground. Strange ice formations appear there sometimes, even on warm days. I've trained the new rangers about the old trails and the tribal lands, teaching them to respect the ancient warnings. Most think I'm just a crazy old ranger with too many stories, but a few understand. Sarah visits sometimes. She recovered fully, but transferred to a ranger station in Florida, said she'd had enough of snow for one lifetime. Can't blame her. Pete stayed on but never goes into the deep woods alone anymore. The nightmares aren't as bad now, 15 years later. But I still keep old Joseph's obsidian blade mounted on my wall just in case. The compass too, it never worked right after that day, always pointing toward the burial ground, instead of north. Last week, I saw fresh tracks in the early snow that made my blood run cold. Different from the wendigos, but not from any animal I know. Thunder's old collar, which I keep on my desk, started frosting over for no reason. I may be older now, my shoulder might ache when the weather turns, and I might be missing a couple of fingers, but I still patrol these mountains. Because sometimes on dark winter nights, I hear whispers in the wind that sound almost like words, and I know that the wendigo might not have been the only thing hiding in these ancient woods. My name is Catherine Reynolds, but everyone calls me Kit. I've been a ranger at Redwood National Park for the past 5 years, though sometimes it feels like these ancient trees have been part of my life forever. I guess that's what happens when you grow up with a forest ranger for a father. Tonight feels different. The harvest moon hangs low and heavy in the sky, painting everything in an eerie orange glow. Even the massive redwoods, some older than 1,000 years, seem to be holding their breath. I'm sitting in my ranger station looking through reports of 3 missing hikers this week alone. Something about it doesn't feel right. I pick up my father's old ranger badge from my desk, running my thumb over its worn surface. He disappeared in these same woods 15 years ago. They called it an accident, but they never found his body. Just his badge, lying in a clearing, as if waiting for someone to find it. The radio crackles to life, making me jump. Kit, you there? We've got another report. 2 teenagers missing near Elk Creek Trail. It's Jerry from Dispatch, his voice tense. I grab my gear, flashlight, first aid kit, and my compound bow. Some other rangers laugh at me for carrying a bow instead of just a gun, but they don't understand. This bow has saved my life more times than I can count, especially during my Olympic archery days. Old habits die hard, I guess. As I step outside, something feels wrong. The forest is too quiet. Usually, at this time of night, you'd hear owls hooting, crickets chirping, maybe even a distant wolf. But now, nothing. Just silence and those massive redwoods stretching up into the darkness like ancient guardians. I click on my flashlight and head toward my truck. The beam catches something on one of the trees. 3 long, deep scratches in the bark, way too high up for any normal animal. My heart skips a beat. In 15 years of forest work, I've never seen anything like this. The radio crackles again. Kit, you copy? I copy, Jerry. I'm heading out now. But listen, have you noticed anything strange lately? Anything at all? There's a long pause. Finally, Jerry's voice comes back, quieter this time. Just be careful out there, Kit. Something's not right in those woods tonight. I climb into my truck, my father's badge heavy in my pocket. As I start the engine, I can't shake the feeling that tonight is going to change everything. The harvest moon watches through the trees, and somewhere in the darkness, something waits. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of the longest night of my life. I drive slowly along the dark forest road, my headlights cutting through the thick fog. The radio keeps making static noises, which isn't normal. We usually have perfect reception out here. I turn it down and roll down my window, listening to the forest. Still nothing. No animal sounds at all. My truck's headlights catch something on the road ahead. I slow down and stop. There in the middle of the path lies a deer. But something's wrong. As I get out to check, my flashlight reveals what's left of it. The poor thing looks like it was attacked, but not eaten. No normal predator would waste food like this. That's the 3rd one this week. I mutter to myself, taking pictures with my phone. The weird part? There's hardly any blood, like something drained it. A twig snaps in the darkness behind me. I spin around, my hand automatically reaching for my bow. The forest seems to close in around me, the massive redwoods creating shadows within shadows. My flashlight beam looks weak against all this darkness. Another crack, closer this time. "Hello?" I call out, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is Ranger Reynolds. Is anyone there?" No answer, but I swear I can feel something watching me. Dad always said trust your gut in the forest, it knows things before your brain does. Right now, my gut is screaming at me to move. I back up slowly toward my truck, not taking my eyes off the tree line. That's when I see them. 2 red dots in the darkness, about 8 feet up a tree. Too high to be a mountain lion, too bright to be a reflection. Eyes, watching me. My hand shakes as I reach for the truck door. The red eyes don't move, but somehow they seem to get brighter. My head starts feeling fuzzy, like I'm about to faint. The radio suddenly bursts to life with Jerry's voice, making me jump. Kit, come in. We've got another missing person report." The eyes disappear. I practically dive into my truck, slam the door and lock it. My heart's pounding so hard I can barely speak into the radio. "Jerry," I manage to say, "something's very wrong out here, and I think I know where to start looking for those missing people." "What do you mean?" I start the engine, keeping my eyes on the darkness around me. "I need to check my father's old files. He saw something out here 15 years ago, something he wrote about. I never believed him then, but now." "Kit, what did you see out there?" I put the truck in drive, my hands still shaking. "I'm not sure yet. But whatever it is, it's been here a long time. And I don't think it wants us in its forest anymore." As I drive away, I check my rearview mirror. For just a second, I see those red eyes again following my truck. And this time, I swear they're closer. Back at the ranger station, I pull out my father's old files from the bottom drawer of my desk. My hands are still shaking a bit as I spread them across the table. 15 years of dust makes me cough. "Come on, Dad," I whisper, flipping through the pages. "Show me what you found." The door creaks open behind me, and I nearly jump out of my skin. "Whoa, easy there. It's Marcus Rodriguez, one of the older rangers. He's been here longer than anyone, even longer than my dad was. Little jumpy tonight, Kit." I try to smile, but it probably looks more like a grimace. "Marcus, you remember my father, right? Did he ever tell you about anything strange in the forest?" Marcus's friendly smile fades a little. He closes the door and sits down across from me. "What did you see out there tonight?" I tell him everything, the dead deer, the silence in the forest, those red eyes. As I talk, Marcus gets paler and paler. "Look at this," I say, pulling out one of Dad's old notebooks. The pages are filled with his messy handwriting and rough sketches. Dad was tracking something. Look at the dates. Every 30 years, people go missing in the same part of the forest. It goes back to the 1890s. Marcus rubs his face. He suddenly looks very tired. "Kit, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you years ago, about the night your father disappeared." But before he can continue, Jerry's voice comes through on the radio again. "All Rangers, we've got an emergency. 2 hikers just ran into the visitor center. They're saying something chased them through the forest." I grab my bow and look at Marcus. "Coming," he nods, but there's something strange in his eyes. "Kit, wait, take these." He hands me 3 arrows I've never seen before. They look old, with silver tips and strange markings on the shafts. "What are these?" "Your father made them," he said. He said they were for a special kind of hunting. Marcus coughs, and I notice how thin he's gotten lately. "Just promise me you'll save them for when you really need them." As we head out to my truck, I can't shake the feeling that Marcus knows more than he's telling me. The harvest moon is higher now, making the forest look blood red. "Marcus," I ask as we drive, "what really happened to my father that night?" He's quiet for a long time. Finally he says, "Kit, some things in this forest, They're older than the redwoods themselves, and they don't like being disturbed. Suddenly, a howl echoes through the trees, but it's like no wolf I've ever heard. It sounds almost human. Marcus grips the dashboard. "Drive faster," he whispers. "It's hunting." We reach the visitor center in record time. The two hikers, a young couple, are huddled in blankets, shaking. The girl can't stop crying, and the guy keeps looking over his shoulder like he expects something to burst through the windows. "It was huge," the guy stammers when I ask what happened. Like a wolf, but it walked on two legs. And its eyes," he stops, shuddering. "Red." I ask quietly. They both look at me in shock. "How did you know?" the girl whispers. Before I can answer, the lights in the visitor center flicker and die. Everyone freezes. Through the windows, the harvest moon casts long shadows across the floor. "Nobody move," Marcus whispers, but something's wrong with his voice. It sounds strained, like he's in pain. I turn to look at him and gasp. He's leaning against the wall, sweating. "Marcus, what's wrong?" "Kit," he manages to say, "I need to tell you something. About your father. About why I've been helping you." He starts coughing violently. That's when we hear it. Heavy footsteps on the wooden deck outside. Slow, deliberate. Like whatever it is wants us to hear it coming. The hikers whimper and huddle closer together. I grab my bow, and one of the special arrows Marcus gave me. My hands are steady now. Years of Olympic training kicking in. "It's hunting us," the girl whispers. "No," Marcus says, straightening up despite his obvious pain. "It's hunting her. Kit, listen to me. Your father wasn't killed by accident. He was protecting something this creature wants. Something that's been hidden in these woods for over 100 years. A shadow passes by the window. Massive, at least 8 feet tall. Those red eyes appear again. Looking straight at me. The badges," Marcus continues urgently. "All those missing Rangers badges. They're not just trophies. The window explodes inward in a shower of glass. The hikers scream. I raise my bow, but the creature moves impossibly fast. In the chaos, I see Marcus pulling something from his jacket. It looks like an old piece of paper. "Run," he shouts at me. "Take this and run. Find the cave your father marked." I'll hold it off. "Marcus, no." But he pushes the paper into my hands and shoves me toward the back door. As I stumble out into the moonlight, I hear horrible sounds from inside. Growls, screams, breaking furniture. I run into the forest, my father's badge bouncing against my chest, Marcus's paper clutched in my hand. Behind me, a howl splits the night, but this time, it sounds like a cry of victory. I don't stop running until I can't breathe anymore. When I finally look at the paper Marcus gave me, my blood runs cold. It's a map, drawn in my father's handwriting, with a note scrawled across it. "If you're reading this, I failed. Don't let it get all 7 badges. The forest's power must be protected. I'm sorry, Kit, I love you." I lean against a huge redwood, trying to catch my breath. My hands are shaking as I study Dad's map in the moonlight. It shows a part of the forest I've never been to, marked with a red X and the words "Ancient Grove." Suddenly, my radio crackles. "Kit." It's Marcus's voice, but it sounds weak. "Kit, if you can hear me, I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. I'm at the old ranger cabin. Hurry. I know I shouldn't go. Everything in me says it's a trap, but Marcus is the only link I have to what happened to my father." I check my bow, count my arrows, especially the 3 silver-tipped ones, and start moving through the trees. The old ranger cabin is about a mile away. As I walk, I notice something strange. The moonlight seems to be guiding my path, creating a silver trail between the trees. Dad always said the forest helps those who respect it. Maybe he was right. I hear coughing before I see the cabin. Marcus is slumped on the porch, holding his side. There's blood on his ranger uniform. "Marcus," I run to him, looking around frantically for any sign of the creature. "Kit, listen carefully," he wheezes. "Your father, He was part of a secret group of rangers. They protected something ancient in these woods, something powerful. He coughs again. The creature, it was once a ranger too, back in 1890, but it got greedy, wanted the power for itself. What power? I ask, helping him sit up. The forest's heart. Your father hid it, split its location into 7 pieces. Each piece, he touches my father's badge on my chest, is hidden in a ranger's badge. The creature needs all 7 to find it. A twig snaps in the darkness. Marcus grabs my arm. It already has 5 badges. Your father's and mine are the last 2. You can't let it. A growl cuts through the night. I spin around, bow, ready. Those red eyes are back, floating in the darkness between the trees. Run, Kit, Marcus shouts, pushing something else into my hands, his ranger badge. Find the grove. The answers are all there. The creature emerges from the shadows. In the moonlight, I finally see it clearly. Massive, wolf-like, but standing like a man. Its red eyes lock onto mine, and that dizzy feeling returns. Go, Marcus yells, and somehow I make my legs move. I run into the forest, the creature's howl shaking the very ground. This time, it sounds angry. I run until I can't hear anything but my own breathing. Looking down, I'm holding both badges now, my father's and Marcus's. The last 2 pieces of whatever puzzle my father died protecting. The map shows the ancient grove is still miles away, but now I know what I have to do. The creature will follow me. It needs these badges. Maybe that's exactly what Dad was counting on. I check my bow one last time, and start walking deeper into the forest. Behind me, far in the distance, I hear another howl. The hunt is on. But this time, I'm ready. The ancient grove isn't on any official park maps. Following Dad's hand-drawn map, I push through thick brush until I find it, a circle of the oldest redwoods I've ever seen. Their trunks are wider than my truck, and they seem to touch the sky. My flashlight beam catches something carved into one of the trees, symbols, like the ones on the silver arrows Marcus gave me. As I get closer, I hear water. There's a small cave behind one of the massive trees, with a stream running out of it. This is it, I whisper to myself. I touch both badges in my pocket, thinking of Marcus, of Dad. The creature will be coming. I need to work fast. Inside the cave, my flashlight reveals more carvings on the walls. They tell a story. Pictures of rangers, a glowing heart in the forest, and a dark figure with red eyes. But what catches my attention is a small hole in the cave wall, shaped exactly like a ranger's badge. Suddenly, my flashlight flickers and dies. The cave goes dark, except for the moonlight streaming in from the entrance, and there, blocking that light, is a massive shadow. Clever girl. The creature speaks for the first time. Its voice is rough, like tree bark scraping on stone. Just like your father, I knock one of the silver arrows, my hand steady despite my racing heart. What did you do to him? The creature chuckles, a sound that makes my skin crawl. He made his choice, like Marcus did, like you will. It steps into the cave. Give me the badges, Catherine. Give them to me, and you can walk away. Why? I ask, buying time as I slowly back up. What's so important about this place? Power. It growls. The forest's power. Your father and his friends thought they could keep it safe, keep it secret, but it belongs to me. I've waited 30 years to collect all the badges, and you have the last 2. It moves faster than I can believe. One moment it's at the cave entrance, the next it's almost on top of me. I release the silver arrow. It strikes the creature's shoulder, and for the first time I hear it scream in pain. But it doesn't stop. If anything, it gets angrier. With one swipe of its massive arm, it knocks my bow away. I slam against the cave wall, the badges falling from my pocket. The creature reaches for them but stops. Something's happening. Moonlight is pouring into the cave, reflecting off the stream, off the badges, creating a pattern on the wall. No, the creature growls. No. I realize what Dad did. The badges, the cave, the moonlight, it was all a trap. The light grows brighter and brighter, and the creature howls in rage and pain. But we're both trapped in here with it, and I have a feeling this isn't over yet. The bright light fills the cave, and I shield my eyes. The creature thrashes around, its howls echoing off the walls. Through my fingers I see something impossible. It's changing. The wolf-like features start melting away. In the magical moonlight, the creature becomes smaller, more human. Finally, standing there is an old man in a tattered ranger uniform from the 1890s. His eyes are still glowing red, but they're fading. "You don't understand," he gasps, looking at his human hands in horror. "The forest's power. I was so close. I grabbed my bow and the last silver arrow. Tell me what happened to my father." The old ranger laughs, but it turns into a cough. "Your father, he was just like you, wouldn't listen, wouldn't share the power. The forest chose him as its guardian, but he wasn't worthy. None of them were." "And you think you are?" I ask, keeping the arrow aimed at his heart. "I protected these woods for 30 years before they betrayed me," he snarls. "Before they gave the power to others. I earned it." Suddenly, the cave walls start glowing. The carvings light up one by one, and I hear something, whispers, like wind through trees, but inside my head. The old ranger hears them too. His eyes go wide. "No, please." The whispers get louder. I start understanding words. Choose. Protect, guardian. "It's choosing again," the old ranger whispers. After all these years, he looks at me with hatred. "It's choosing you." He lunges at me faster than any normal human should move. But I'm ready. All those years of archery training pay off in one perfect shot. The silver arrow flies straight and true. The old ranger freezes, the arrow in his chest. He looks down at it in surprise. "I just wanted to protect the forest." Then he crumples to the ground. The whispers grow stronger. The stream in the cave starts glowing green. Something rises from the water. A small bright light, like a star made of pure forest magic. Dad's badge and Marcus's badge float up by themselves. They fit perfectly into the holes in the cave wall. There's a click, and the light floats toward me. "I understand now, Dad," I whisper. "This is what you were protecting, what you died for." The light touches my chest, right where I wear my own ranger badge. Warmth spreads through my whole body. I feel the forest, every tree, every animal, every breath of wind. I'm its guardian now, and I won't fail like the old ranger did. The sun is rising as I walk out of the cave. Everything looks different now. Brighter, more alive. I can feel the forest humming around me, like it's saying hello. In my pocket, all 7 ranger badges are warm to the touch. Each one tells a story of brave rangers who protected this forest's secret. My father's badge glows the brightest, almost like it's happy to be home. I find Marcus where I left him at the old cabin. He's weak, but alive, smiling when he sees me. "You did it," he whispers. I can feel the change in the forest. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I ask, helping him up. He coughs softly. "Your father made us promise. He said you'd know when the time was right, and he was right. You're the perfect guardian." Back at the ranger station, the morning shift is starting. The other rangers are talking about strange lights they saw in the forest last night. The 2 hikers are safe, telling everyone about a brave ranger who saved them from a wolf. Nobody will ever know the whole truth. That's part of being a guardian, keeping secrets, protecting the forest's magic, just like my father did. I pin my ranger badge to my shirt. It feels different now, warmer, alive with the forest's power. Through it, I can sense things, animals moving through the trees, the health of the redwoods, when storms are coming. "What now?" Marcus asks, as we watch the sunrise paint the redwoods gold. I smile, touching my badge. "Now we protect the forest, but differently than before. No more hiding in shadows, no more letting fear rule these woods." A deer appears at the edge of the trees. It looks right at me and bows its head. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls, a normal wolf this time, saying good morning to the sun. "Your father would be proud," Marcus says quietly. "I know," I reply. "He's still here in every tree, every shadow, every badge, and now I understand why he loved this forest so much. I look up at the ancient redwoods, my new partners in protecting this land. The morning light makes them glow like they're on fire, but it's a friendly fire now, a protective one. The forest has chosen its new guardian, and this time things will be different. This time the red eyes in the redwoods will be watching over the forest, not hunting in it. And somewhere in the whisper of leaves, and the creak of ancient branches, I swear I can hear my father saying, "Well done, Kit, well done." My name is Jack Hawthorne, and I've been a ranger at Mammoth Cave National Park for the past 15 years. After serving as a Navy SEAL, I thought I'd found peace in these ancient caves of Kentucky. But what happened last March changed everything I knew about the darkness below. It started like any other morning. I was sipping my coffee in the ranger station looking over the daily reports when the first tremors hit. Not the usual small shakes we sometimes get, these were different. The coffee in my mug rippled like something out of Jurassic Park, and the old cave maps on my wall rattled against the wooden panels. That's when Tommy, our young radio operator, burst through the door. "Jack, we've lost contact with Dr. Peterson's team." His face was pale, and I knew something was wrong. 3 geologists had gone down to study some new passages we discovered last month. They should have checked in hours ago. I put down my coffee, trying to ignore the familiar knot in my stomach. Ever since I lost Sarah, my wife, in that cave rescue 5 years ago, every emergency call brings back memories I'd rather forget. The screams, the darkness, the feeling of helplessness. No, I can't think about that now. These people need me. As I gathered my gear, my hands brushed against the old photo I keep in my locker. Sarah's smiling face looked back at me, taken just days before the accident. "Not this time," I whispered. "Not on my watch." The morning sun was barely touching the cave entrance when more tremors shook the ground. But what caught my attention were the markings near the cave mouth, ancient Native American pictographs I'd seen 100 times before. Today, though, they seemed different, almost glowing in the early light. They showed strange twisted figures and carried a warning I'd never fully understood. Those who dwell below wake from their endless sleep. I've never been one to believe in supernatural stuff, but 15 years in these caves teach you to respect the unknown. As I clicked on my headlamp and checked my radio one last time, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't going to be just another rescue mission. Little did I know, as I took those first steps into the darkness, that I was about to uncover horrors that had been waiting in these caves for thousands of years. And they were hungry. The call for backup came quickly. Within an hour, I was joined by Dr. Laura Martinez, a cave biologist who'd studied these caves for years. She was smart and practical, the kind of person you want around when things go wrong. Peter Collins, my trainee ranger, was practically bouncing with excitement despite the situation. He was young, maybe too young for what we were about to face. "Jack, look at this," Laura said, pointing her flashlight at some strange marks on the cave wall. They weren't normal scratch marks from rocks or animals. These were different, deliberate, almost like claw marks, but bigger than anything I'd ever seen. Billy Whitaker, our local guide, didn't like it one bit. He'd grown up hearing stories about these caves, stories his grandmother told him about things that lived in the deep places. I usually dismissed such tales, but today, they made my skin crawl. "My people have always known these caves hold secrets," Sarah Running Bear, our Native American expert, said quietly. She ran her fingers over the claw marks, her face serious. "These are fresh." Rex, my search and rescue dog, was acting strange too. He kept whining and looking down the dark tunnels, his tail tucked between his legs. Rex never acted scared, he'd been on countless rescue missions with me. But something was spooking him bad. We checked our gear one last time. 1960s equipment isn't fancy, but it's reliable. Rope, harnesses, first aid kits, emergency rations, and our radios. I made sure everyone had extra batteries for their lights. In the caves, darkness is more than just scary, it's deadly. "Remember," I told the team, "we stay together. No wandering off, no hero stuff. Those geologists are counting on us. As we moved deeper into the cave, the temperature dropped. Our breath came out in white puffs, and the walls seemed to close in. The usual cave sounds, dripping water, distant echoes, seemed different somehow. Muffled. Wrong. That's when Billy noticed something that made us all stop dead in our tracks. There, in the beam of his flashlight, was a perfectly preserved camp from the 1940s. Untouched. Like someone had just stepped away for a minute and never came back. "Jack," Peter whispered, his excitement gone now, replaced by something else. Fear. "Look at the coffee cups." There, on a small fold-out table, sat 3 tin cups. The coffee inside them wasn't dried up. It was still liquid. Still warm. The cave suddenly felt a lot darker, and I could hear everyone's breathing getting faster. Whatever had happened to those geologists, whatever was down here with us, we were getting closer to finding out. And I had a feeling we weren't going to like the answer. The warm coffee cups shook me up, but we had to keep moving. The passage ahead got narrower, and the air felt heavier with each step. Rex stayed close to my legs, which wasn't like him at all. "Hey, Jack," Billy called out softly. "These rock formations, they weren't here last week." He was right. Strange twisted columns of rock stood where there had been nothing before. They looked like they'd grown overnight, like some kind of stone mushrooms. Dr. Martinez took samples, her hands shaking slightly. "This isn't normal cave growth," she whispered. "It's impossible for rocks to form this fast." That's when we heard it. A sound that made us all freeze. It wasn't a drip of water or falling rocks. It was like a long, low whistle, but not quite human. It echoed through the tunnels, making it hard to tell where it came from. "Everyone, lights off," I ordered quietly. We stood in complete darkness, listening. The sound came again. Closer this time. Rex started growling. Something he never does. In the silence, Peter's radio crackled to life. But instead of static or voices, it played a strange humming sound that made my teeth hurt. Sarah grabbed my arm. "Jack," she whispered, "look at the walls." I clicked my light on, keeping it dim. The cave walls were moving. No, not moving. Growing. The rock formations we'd seen earlier were spreading like ice across a pond, but faster. Way faster. "We need to move," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Now." But Billy was already backing away, his face white as a sheet. "No, no, no," he kept saying. "My grandma warned me. The hungry ones, they're real." Before I could stop him, he turned and ran down a side tunnel. "Billy, wait," I shouted, but he was gone. The sound of his footsteps echoed, then suddenly stopped. Just stopped. Peter started to go after him, but I held him back. "We stick together," I said firmly, even though my heart was racing. "No splitting up." Dr. Martinez pointed her light down the tunnel where Billy had gone. There was something on the ground, his flashlight, still on, rolling slowly back and forth. But no Billy. The whistling sound came again, this time from right above us. We all looked up, and that's when I saw it. Something pale and human-like, but wrong in every way, clinging to the ceiling like a spider. Its skin was almost see-through, and where its eyes should have been. I've seen a lot of scary things in my life, but nothing like this, nothing that made my blood run this cold. "Nobody move," I whispered, as the creature's head turned toward us. "Nobody make a sound." The creature moved its head from side to side, like it was sniffing the air. Even though it had no eyes, I felt like it was staring right at us. My hand tightened around my flashlight, and I could hear Peter's quick, scared breathing behind me. Suddenly, Rex let out a low whine. The creature's head snapped toward the sound, and in one quick movement, it scuttled across the ceiling like a lizard. "Dr. Martinez gasped, and that's when everything went crazy. More of them appeared from the shadows, 3, maybe 4. Their pale bodies glowed slightly in our flashlight beams. The whistling sound got louder, like they were talking to each other. "Run," I shouted, pushing the team back the way we came. We sprinted through the tunnel, our lights bouncing wildly off the walls. I could hear them following us. their weird scratching sounds getting closer. Peter tripped on a rock and fell hard. I heard him scream. His leg was bent at a wrong angle. Sarah and I grabbed him under the arms and dragged him behind a large boulder. Dr. Martinez pulled out the first aid kit with shaking hands. "They hunt by sound," Sarah whispered, her eyes wide. "Like the stories say. They hear our heartbeats." I pressed my back against the cold rock trying to think. The creatures were still out there. We could hear them moving around, searching. Rex huddled against my legs, silent but trembling. Dr. Martinez leaned close to look at one of the creatures through a gap in the rocks. "Fascinating," she whispered. "They've evolved to live down here. Their skin is almost transparent, and look at their ears." She never finished that sentence. A pale hand shot through the gap and grabbed her shoulder. We all watched in horror as she was pulled backward into the darkness. Her scream echoed through the cave, then suddenly cut off. "Laura!" Peter tried to stand but fell back, his broken leg giving way. Tears ran down his face. "We have to help her." I shook my head, my throat tight. "She's gone, Peter. We can't help her now." Sarah pulled out something from her bag. It looked like dried herbs and small bones. "My grandmother taught me about these creatures," she said, her voice shaking. "There's a way to fight them, but..." A loud crash interrupted her. The creatures were throwing rocks at our hiding spot, trying to make us move. They were smart. Too smart. And they were getting closer. I checked my watch. We'd been down here for 6 hours. Nobody topside would come looking for us for at least another 6. We were on our own. "Sarah," I whispered, "whatever your grandmother taught you now would be a really good time to use it." Sarah quickly arranged the herbs and bones in a small circle. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady as she started chanting softly in her native language. The air around us felt different, heavier somehow. "Jack," Peter whispered through clenched teeth, trying to handle the pain in his leg. "I hear water. There must be an underground river nearby." He was right. The sound of rushing water was getting louder. Then I remembered something, my old Navy SEAL training. I still had some emergency explosives in my pack, meant for clearing blocked cave passages. "Maybe." "Sarah," I whispered, "keep doing what you're doing. I have an idea, but it's risky." The creatures were getting bolder. One of them crawled right over our boulder, its long fingers scraping the rock. Rex growled softly, and I held him close. In the dim light, I could see their bodies better now. They were like humans who had lived in the dark so long they'd turned into something else. I carefully pulled out the explosives and started setting them up. My hands were sweating, but years of training kept them steady. If I could place them just right, maybe we could flood this section of the cave. It might not kill the creatures, but it could trap them down here. "Jack," Peter's voice was urgent but quiet. "Look." Through a crack in the rocks, we could see more creatures gathering. But they weren't coming for us, they were protecting something. In the distance there was a chamber filled with what looked like giant glowing eggs. Hundreds of them. "A nest," Sarah whispered, still chanting between words. "They're protecting their babies." Suddenly, one of the creatures made a sound different from the others, higher, almost like a scream. They all turned toward us at once. Our hiding spot wasn't going to last much longer. "Peter," I said, looking him in the eye, "I need to set these charges along the river wall. But I can't do it with them following me." Peter nodded slowly, understanding what I was asking. "I'll distract them. I can't run anyway." He tried to smile, but I could see he was terrified. "Just make it count, Jack." Sarah grabbed my arm. "The ritual is almost complete. When I finish, they'll be weakened, but only for a few minutes. You'll have to hurry." I looked at my young trainee, this brave kid who was willing to sacrifice himself. At Sarah, whose ancient knowledge might save us. At Rex, loyal until the end. And I thought of Laura, of Billy, of my wife Sarah from years ago. No more deaths in these caves. Not if I could help it. "Get ready," I whispered, checking the detonator. "This is going to get loud." Peter grabbed a rock and looked at me one last time. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded, my throat tight. Then he threw the rock as far as he could and started shouting, "Hey, over here you ugly cave freaks." The creatures turned towards his voice just as Sarah finished her chant. A strange wave of energy seemed to pulse through the cave, making the creatures screech in pain. That was my chance. I ran towards the underground river, Rex right behind me. My hands were shaking as I placed the explosives along the wall. The rushing water was so loud, I could barely hear the creatures anymore. But I knew they were coming. "Hurry, Jack," Sarah's voice echoed. The creatures were recovering from her ritual, and their angry shrieks filled the cave. I heard Peter scream. Looking back, I saw 3 creatures surrounding him. But instead of attacking, they were just standing there. Then I heard it, voices calling my name. Not the creatures, but voices I knew. Sarah's voice, my dead wife's voice, calling from the darkness. "Jack, help me. I'm still down here." My head started spinning. Was this real? The voices got louder, mixing with Peter's screams and Sarah's chanting. Rex barked, snapping me back to reality. No time for hallucinations, the air was getting thin down here, playing tricks on my mind. I set the last charge and started the timer. "Peter, Sarah, cover your ears." The first explosion shook the whole cave. Rocks crashed down as water began pouring through the cracks. The creatures screeched and scattered, confused by the noise and vibrations. "Run!" I shouted, rushing back to grab Peter. Sarah helped me lift him, and we started moving as fast as we could. Rex led the way, finding the path through the falling rocks. Water was rushing in fast now, filling the lower tunnels. The creatures were everywhere, some trying to escape, others still coming after us. Their nest of eggs disappeared under the rising water. Then I saw it, a higher tunnel, leading up. "There," I pointed. "Loot." But as we reached it, I felt cold hands grab my legs. One of the creatures had me. I looked into its eyeless face and saw my own reflection in its pale skin. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Then Rex jumped, biting the creature's arm. It let go, shrieking. "Jack, come on." Sarah pulled me up as the water rose higher. We climbed into the tunnel, just as the last explosion went off. The sound was deafening. The whole cave shook like it was going to collapse. Water roared behind us as we crawled through the narrow tunnel. Peter was trying not to cry from the pain in his leg, but he kept moving. Rex whined but stayed close, guiding us forward. "I see light," Sarah shouted over the noise. A tiny dot of daylight was visible ahead. We were almost out, but then we heard it, that horrible whistling sound, right behind us. One last creature had followed us into the tunnel. I could feel its cold breath on my neck. "Go," I yelled, pushing Peter and Sarah ahead. "Don't stop." The creature grabbed my boot. I kicked hard, my flashlight beam catching its face. For a second, I saw something almost human in its expression, fear. The water was rising in the tunnel behind it, and it was scared. Rex turned back and barked fiercely. The creature hesitated, and that was all we needed. We scrambled forward as fast as we could. The tunnel started sloping up, and suddenly we could stand. "Almost there," Sarah called. The exit was just ahead, sunlight streaming in. But I could hear more rocks falling, the tunnel starting to cave in. With one final push, we burst out into the daylight. We kept running until we were far from the cave entrance. Behind us there was a deep rumble as parts of the cave system collapsed. We fell to the ground, gasping for air. Peter was pale from pain, but alive. Rex licked my face, his tail wagging. Sarah hugged her bag of herbs, tears in her eyes. Did we do it?" Peter asked weakly. "Are they trapped?" I looked back at the cave entrance. Dust was still settling, and water trickled out. "They're trapped," I said. But they're still down there," Sarah finished. Somewhere in the deep, within an hour, the whole area was swarming with government people. They asked us lots of questions, but I could tell they didn't believe our story. They sealed off the cave entrance with concrete and posted guards. Peter's leg healed, but he never went caving again. Sarah stayed on as a park guide, teaching visitors about her people's history, though she leaves out certain parts. As for me, I still work at Mammoth Cave, but I don't go into the deep parts anymore. Sometimes, late at night, I can hear faint whistling sounds coming from the sealed entrance. And when I do, Rex starts growling, and we both walk away real fast. The official report says there was just a cave-in, that the missing geologists were never found. But we know the truth. And we know that deep under the Kentucky ground, in the darkest parts of Mammoth Cave, something is still down there. Waiting. It quotes been 2 years since that day in the caves. I still work as a ranger, but something changed in me. Every morning, when I drink my coffee at the ranger station, I think about those warm cups we found down there. Last week, a group of scientists came asking questions. They had fancy equipment, and talked about studying the sealed sections of the cave. I told them the same thing I tell everyone. Those parts are closed for safety reasons. They didn't like that answer, but they left anyway. Peter visits sometimes. His leg healed crooked, and he walks with a slight limp now. He's teaching at a local school, telling kids about cave safety. The normal kind, anyway. Sometimes our eyes meet, and we both know we're thinking about what's down there. Sarah Running Bear still works here too. She's set up warning signs in her native language around the old entrances. When tourists ask what they mean, she just smiles and says they're traditional blessings. But I know better. Rex hasn't changed much, except he won't go near any cave entrance now. Smart dog. He barks at night sometimes, when everything is quiet, like he hears something we can't. The government people come by every few months to check the seals. They pretend they're doing routine maintenance, but their faces are always serious, and they carry weapons they try to hide. Yesterday, I felt a small tremor while walking the trails. Nothing big, just a little shake. But Rex started whining, and I swear I heard that familiar whistling sound, very faint, coming up through the ground. I've started training new rangers. I teach them everything they need to know about normal cave rescue. But I also teach them to listen to their gut, to respect the darkness, and most importantly, to never ever go past the sealed sections. Because sometimes, late at night when the park is empty, I stand at my cabin window and look toward the cave. And I wonder, did we really trap them down there? Or did we just make them angry? The missing geologists were never found. Neither was Billy, or Dr. Martinez. Their families still come by, leaving flowers at the cave entrance. I don't have the heart to tell them that their loved ones are probably still down there, in the dark with those things. I keep my old Navy SEAL gear ready, just in case. Sarah keeps her herbs and ritual items close too. We don't talk about it, but we both know, if those creatures ever find a way out, we'll be ready. Because the hunger below, it's still there, still waiting. And sometimes when I look at those sealed cave entrances, I can't help but think, they're getting closer to finding a way out. My name is Ethan Blackwood, and I've been a ranger at Olympic National Park for almost a decade now. But what I'm about to tell you, well, it's something I've never shared with anyone outside our small group of survivors. It all started 3 weeks ago, in mid-November. The morning was unusually quiet. You know that eerie silence when something just feels wrong? I was doing my usual morning patrol with Shadow, my wolf dog, walking beside me. The fog that day was different. Now, we get plenty of fog here in the Pacific Northwest, but this was strange. It moved in ways fog shouldn't move, like it had a mind of its own. I remember checking my radio to call back to base, but all I got was static. Even my compass was acting weird, spinning like crazy. Shadow was on edge too. His fur standing up, ears alert. He's usually the calmest dog you'll ever meet, but something had him spooked. As we walked deeper into the ancient forest past those massive trees covered in moss and surrounded by ferns, I couldn't shake this feeling that we were being watched. The fog kept getting thicker, and I swear I could see shapes moving in it. Tall, human-like figures that disappeared when I looked directly at them. That's when my phone buzzed. It was Jenny from the ranger station, her voice shaky. "Ethan, we've got another missing hikers report. Third one this week, and there's something else. We found some animals, they're alive, but something's wrong with them. Really wrong. Can you come back?" I turned around to head back, but the fog had gotten so thick I could barely see my hand in front of my face. If it wasn't for Shadow, I might not have found my way out. As we walked, I kept thinking about my grandfather. He was a ranger here too, before he disappeared 20 years ago. The last thing he ever said to me was, "Sometimes, Ethan, the forest holds secrets that are better left undiscovered." I should have listened to him. But I didn't know then that this was just the beginning. I didn't know that the next few days would change everything I thought I knew about our world, about reality itself. And I certainly didn't know that the fog was just the start of our nightmare. Looking back now, I wish I could tell my younger self what was coming. But would I have believed it? Would anyone? This is the story of what really happened in Olympic National Park during those dark November days. A story about ancient forces, about sacrifice, and about the thin line between our world and something else. But I should warn you, once you know the truth, you can never unknow it. And sometimes when the fog rolls in, you might find yourself wondering what's really hiding in the mist. By the time I reached the ranger station, things had gotten even stranger. Jenny was right. Something was definitely wrong. Dr. Rebecca Morrison, our local weather expert, was already there, looking at weather maps on her computer with a worried face. "Ethan, take a look at this," she said, pointing to her screen. "This fog pattern, it's not natural. It's moving against the wind, and it's staying in one area for way too long." I was about to respond when Kevin Foster, our newest and most excited young ranger, burst through the door. His face was pale, and he was breathing hard like he'd been running. "You guys need to see this," he said, pulling out his phone. "I found these weird marks on the old oak trees near Bear Creek, and look at this video." The video showed something that made my stomach turn. A deer was walking through the fog, but something was wrong with it. Its fur was inside out, yet somehow it was still alive and walking. I'd never seen anything like it in my 15 years of forest work. That's when John Two Rivers, an elder from the local tribe who often helped us with forest matters, walked in. He took one look at Kevin's video, and his face turned serious. "The old stories," he said quietly. "They're coming true. My grandfather used to tell me about those who walk between worlds. We always thought they were just stories to keep children from wandering into the fog." Shadow, who had been lying quietly at my feet, suddenly stood up and growled at the window. Outside, the fog was getting thicker, and I could have sworn I saw something move in it. Something tall and thin, that definitely wasn't human. Maria Delgado, a local hunter who knew these woods better than anyone, joined us shortly after. She had her rifle with her, which was unusual for a regular visit to the station. "I've been tracking something strange," she said, her voice tense. "Whatever it is, it's scaring all the animals away. Even the bears are running." I pulled out my grandfather's old walking stick, the one he carved himself with strange symbols. I'd always thought the symbols were just decorative, but now, looking at them under the fluorescent lights of the station, they seemed to match the marks Kevin had found on the trees. "We need to figure out what's going on," I said, trying to sound calmer than I felt. "Dr. Morrison, keep tracking that fog. Maria and Kevin, you're with me. We're going to check out those marked trees. Two Rivers, anything you can tell us from the old stories would help." As we gathered our gear, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were about to step into something big, something dangerous. Shadow pressed against my leg like he always did when he sensed trouble coming. "Be careful out there," Jenny called as we headed for the door. "The radio signals are getting worse. You might be on your own." Little did we know. Being on our own would soon be the least of our worries. The forest was about to show us things that would change our lives forever, if we managed to survive them. The walk to Bear Creek was tense. The fog kept getting thicker and our flashlights barely cut through it. Shadow stayed close to me, his ears twitching at every sound. Maria held her rifle ready, and Kevin kept looking over his shoulder like he expected something to jump out at us. "Look," Kevin whispered, pointing at a massive old oak tree. "These are the marks I found." I ran my hand over the strange symbols carved into the bark. They were fresh, maybe just a few hours old. The weird thing was they looked exactly like the ones on my grandfather's walking stick. My hands shook a little as I pulled it out to compare. "Guys." Maria's voice was barely a whisper. "Listen." We all froze. The forest, which is usually full of sounds, birds, insects, wind in the trees, was completely silent. Then we heard it, a soft, wet sound, like someone walking through mud. But it was coming from all around us. Shadow's growl turned into a whimper. I'd never seen him act like this before. He pressed himself against my legs, trembling. Through the fog, about 50 feet ahead, something moved. It was tall, maybe 8 or 9 feet, and thin like a tree branch. But trees don't walk, and they definitely don't glow with a faint blue light. "Nobody move," I whispered, gripping my grandfather's walking stick tighter. The thing in the fog stopped. Even though we couldn't see a face, we all felt it watching us. My radio crackled to life, making us jump. "Ethan," it was Dr. Morrison's voice, breaking through the static. "The fog, it's all moving toward your location. Get out of there now." But before we could move, more shapes appeared in the fog. They were surrounding us. Kevin's flashlight beam passed through one of them. I wish it hadn't. What we saw wasn't solid. It was like looking through dirty glass, but in the shape of a person. Maria raised her rifle, but I put my hand on it. "Don't," I said. "We don't know what they are." That's when the strangest thing happened. My grandfather's walking stick started to feel warm in my hands. The symbols began to give off a faint red glow, and the figures in the fog backed away slightly. "The parking lot is about 200 yards that way," I said, pointing with the stick. "When I say run, run. Stay close together." Shadow suddenly barked. A warning. The air got so cold I could see my breath. "Run." We ran faster than I've ever run in my life. The fog seemed to grab at us, trying to slow us down. I could hear those things following us. Their weird wet footsteps getting closer. Kevin stumbled, and Maria grabbed his arm, pulling him along. The walking stick glowed brighter, cutting a path through the fog. Behind us I heard sounds that I'll never forget. Like whispers in a language that human mouths weren't meant to speak. We burst out of the tree line into the parking lot just as Dr. Morrison's truck came screeching up. "Get in," she yelled. As we piled into the truck, I looked back at the forest. The figures stood at the tree line, swaying slightly. They couldn't wouldn't come into the open area. What were those things? Kevin gasped, trying to catch his breath. "I don't know," I said, watching them fade back into the fog. "But I think my grandfather did. And I think it's time we found out what happened to him 20 years ago." The drive back to the station was silent. We all knew that our lives had just changed forever. The forest we knew was gone, and something ancient and dangerous had taken its place. And somehow, my grandfather's old walking stick was the key to understanding it all. Back at the ranger station, Two Rivers pulled out some old papers from his bag. His hands were shaking a little as he spread them on the table. "These markings," he said, pointing to the symbols on my grandfather's walking stick, "they're protection signs. Our people carved them into trees hundreds of years ago to keep the forest spirits away." For Dr. Morrison was typing furiously on her computer. "The fog patterns are all wrong," she said. It's alive somehow. Look at this, hiss moving against the wind, gathering in specific spots." 5. I looked out the window. The fog was getting thicker, but now I could see something else, shapes moving through it. They were tall and thin, like trees walking on their own six. Shadow wouldn't stop growling at the window. "There's something else," Kevin said, his voice quiet. "Those inside-out animals we found. The old stories talk about creatures that could turn things inside out but keep them alive. They called them those who walk between worlds." 7. Maria loaded her rifle, though we all knew bullets probably wouldn't help against whatever these things were. "In all my years hunting these woods," she said, "I've never seen anything like this. Even the bears are running away." That's when Jenny burst in from the radio room. "We've got 3 more missing hikers," she said. "Last seen near the old tribal burial ground." Two Rivers' face went pale. "The burial ground? That's where the old stories say the doorways are. Mia's places where their world touches ours." I looked down at my grandfather's walking stick, watching the symbols glow faintly red in the dim light. Whatever was happening in our forest, my grandfather knew about it 20 years ago. And now I had a horrible feeling I knew what happened to him. "We need to go to that burial ground," I said. "Tonight, during the fog?" Kevin asked, his voice shaking. "During the fog," I answered, "because I think that's where we'll find our missing hikers. And maybe my grandfather too." The others looked at each other, fear and determination in their eyes. We all knew we might not come back from this, but we were the only ones who could stop whatever was happening to our forest. As we gathered our gear, I couldn't help thinking some stories about monsters in these woods might be true after all. 7. And tonight, we were going to face them. The drive to the burial ground was the longest 20 minutes of my life. The fog was so thick that our truck's headlights barely showed the road. Shadow sat in the back, unusually quiet, his eyes fixed on the swirling mist outside. "Stop the truck!" Two Rivers suddenly shouted. Right in front of us, a deer stood frozen in our headlights. But something was terribly wrong. Its skin was transparent, like glass, and we could see its insides glowing with a blue light. It turned its head to look at us, then vanished into the fog. "They're changing things," Two Rivers whispered, "making that like them." That's when it happened. Kevin, who was sitting next to me, started shaking. His eyes rolled back, and his skin turned pale and cold. "Kevin," Maria reached for him, but I pulled her hand back. "Don't touch him," I shouted. Through the windows, tall shapes were gathering around our truck. The fog pressed against the glass like it was trying to get in. Kevin's voice came out wrong, like 3 people talking at once. "The door opens soon," he said. "When the moon hides, we all become one." Shadow started barking frantically. The symbols on my grandfather's walking stick began to glow brighter than ever, and Kevin screamed, a horrible sound that didn't sound human at all. "The eclipse," Dr. Morrison said, checking her phone with shaking hands. "There's a lunar eclipse tonight. In less than an hour." Two Rivers grabbed my arm. "Your grandfather's journal, did it say anything about an eclipse?" I remembered something, a page I'd found just that morning. He wrote about a night when the moon went dark, said the fog creatures tried to open a door to their world. Kevin's body suddenly went limp. When he opened his eyes again, they were his own, but filled with terror. "I saw them," he whispered. "I saw what they want to do. They're going to turn our whole world inside out, make everything like them." The truck's engine suddenly died. Around us, the fog creatures pressed closer, their tall bodies swaying like trees in a wind we couldn't feel. "The burial ground is just up that hill," Two Rivers said. "If we're going to stop this, we need to get there before the eclipse starts." I gripped the walking stick tight, watching its red glow fight against the blue light of the fog creatures. "We run together," I said. "No matter what happens, we stay together." Maria checked her rifle, even though we all knew it would be useless. Dr. Morrison clutched her laptop bag. Maybe science could still help us somehow. Kevin was pale but standing ready. Two Rivers held some kind of ancient charm in his hands, muttering words I didn't understand. Shadow pressed against my leg, and I felt his strength. We were about to face something that shouldn't exist in our world, but we were the only ones who could stop it. "Ready?" I asked, my hand on the door handle. Everyone nodded. The moment we stepped out of the truck, the fog creatures moved. and our real nightmare began. The moment we stepped out of the truck, the cold hit us like a wall. The fog swirled around our feet, and those tall ghostly figures moved closer. Shadow stayed right by my side, his fur standing straight up. "Run!" I yelled, holding up my grandfather's walking stick. Its red glow cut through the fog like a knife, making a path for us. We ran up the hill toward the burial ground, our feet slipping on wet leaves. The fog creatures followed, making those terrible wet sounds. Their long arms reached for us, passing through tree branches like they weren't even there. Suddenly Maria screamed. One of the creatures had touched her jacket, and the fabric turned clear as glass. She ripped it off just in time, but we all saw what would happen if they actually touched our skin. "Look," Dr. Morrison pointed ahead. Through the fog we could see strange blue crystals growing out of the ground. They were everywhere in the burial ground, glowing like evil stars. Kevin stumbled, grabbing his head. They're trying to get back in," he gasped. "I can feel them." Two Rivers pulled out his charm and pressed it against Kevin's forehead. "Fight them, boy. Your mind is your own." That's when Shadow started acting strange. He ran to the middle of the burial ground and began pawing at the ground, whining. I followed him and found something that made my heart stop. My grandfather's ranger badge, covered in dirt but still shiny. "Ethan." Maria's voice was filled with terror. "The moon." I looked up. The moon was starting to disappear as the eclipse began. The fog creatures were gathering around us in a circle, their bodies growing taller, their blue light getting brighter. "The door," Two Rivers shouted. "They're opening the door." Right in the middle of the burial ground, the air started to tear open like a rip in a curtain. Through it, I could see something else. Another world, but wrong somehow. Everything there was inside out, glowing with that same blue light. Kevin fell to his knees, his eyes turning blue again. "We are coming," he said in that horrible voice. "All will be like us." Shadow started barking at something behind me. I turned around and couldn't believe my eyes. There, in the fog, was a familiar shape. My grandfather. He was like a ghost, but his eyes were kind and sad. "The staff, Ethan," his voice whispered in my head. "It was never just a walking stick, it's a key and a weapon." The eclipse was almost complete. The fog creatures were getting closer. Kevin was shaking all over. Dr. Morrison was frantically typing on her laptop, trying to understand what was happening. Maria stood ready with her rifle, even though we knew it was useless. Two Rivers had started chanting in his native language, and me. I stood there holding my grandfather's walking stick, watching it glow brighter and brighter as the last bit of moonlight disappeared. Whatever was about to happen, I knew this was our last chance to save our world. But the price we would have to pay, I had no idea how high it would be. The burial ground erupted in chaos. The fog creatures merged together, forming something massive, like a giant made of mist and blue light. Kevin was floating off the ground now, his body glowing with that same terrible light. "The staff," my grandfather's spirit called out. "Planted in the center, Ethan." I ran toward the middle of the burial ground, but the fog giant's arm swept down, knocking me off my feet. The walking stick flew from my hands, landing near Maria. "Maria!" "The stick!" I shouted. She dove for it, but one of the creatures touched her leg. I watched in horror as her skin began to turn clear like glass. "Take it!" she screamed, throwing the stick toward me before the blue light consumed her. Shadow jumped between me and the fog giant, barking fiercely. His eyes were glowing now, not blue like the creatures but a warm golden light. Two Rivers was still chanting, his voice getting stronger. "The eclipse is total," Dr. Morrison yelled over the chaos. "Whatever you're going to do it now." I grabbed the walking stick and ran for the center again. The fog giant tried to stop me, but Shadow leaped at it, his golden light pushing the fog back. My brave dog was buying me time, but I could see the light was hurting him. "Shadow, no," I cried, but he kept fighting. Kevin's possessed body floated closer, his voice not his own. "You cannot stop what must be. Your world will join ours." That's when I felt my grandfather's presence next to me. Together, Ethan, his spirit whispered. Family protects family. I raised the walking stick high and brought it down hard into the center of the burial ground. The red symbols exploded with light, shooting up into the dark sky like a laser. 2 rivers chanting reached a peak. The ground started shaking. Kevin screamed, both his voice and the creature's voices together. The fog giant roared, a sound that made the trees tremble. Shadow, come back, I yelled, but my faithful dog gave me one last look, his eyes full of love and determination. Then he ran straight into the fog giant, his golden light blazing. The walking stick's red light met Shadow's golden light, and something incredible happened. The tear in the air, the doorway to their world, started to close. The fog giant was being pulled back through it. No, the voices screamed through Kevin, but his body dropped to the ground as the creatures were ripped out of him. 2 rivers collapsed, his energy spent from the ritual. Dr. Morrison ran to Kevin's side. The fog giant tried one last time to reach us, but Shadow's sacrifice had weakened it too much. With a sound like thunder, the doorway slammed shut. The fog creatures vanished with it, pulled back to their own world. The burial ground went quiet except for the sound of our heavy breathing. But Shadow was gone, and Maria, where Maria had stood, was nothing but a crystal statue, forever frozen in her last brave act. The moon started to reappear, normal moonlight, pushing away the last traces of blue glow. We'd won, but the cost had been too high. My grandfather's spirit touched my shoulder one last time. You did well, son, he said softly. The forest is safe now. Take care of it. As his spirit faded away, I fell to my knees, holding the now quiet walking stick. Kevin was alive but weak. 2 rivers looked years older. Dr. Morrison just stood there, trying to make sense of what she'd seen. The forest was ours again, but it would never be the same, and neither would we.